come.
Last question from me then, if I could, and it's a double-barrel question. Do you believe the new ownership group at Liverpool will refurbish Anfield, or do you think in the end it will be a new stadium? And the second part of my question is regarding increased revenues in football in general. Can you see a time where the domestic rights as they are sold to the English Premier League for the UK remain as they are, but the clubs collectively do something where they want to go out and sell their own international rights on a pay-per-view basis?
Okay, well, that's two very good questions. I think in terms of the first one, I think the statements that the new owners have made are eminently sensible, which is they're not going to make any rash promises. They're going to take their time, bearing in mind this takeover has really gone through very quickly. Mm-hmm. They're going to take their time studying the options. They want to go back to basics and see whether it's feasible to refurbish Anfield and to compare that with the option of building new. You have to remember that about over 10 years ago now, when we started looking at the stadium expansion, our original preference was indeed to expand Anfield, but for a whole variety of practical reasons, we decided the better option was actually to build new. I think it's a perfectly sensible strategy to say, well, you know what, we're going to come in fresh, a different pair of eyes, we're just going to look at everything and no hostages to fortune, we'll consider everything and then we'll make a decision, and that's far more sensible than making promises about what they're going to do within the first few days. It's a perfectly rational approach. In terms of the second question, let me just clarify, when you're talking about the international rights, did you mean by that perhaps instead of the collective deal, the bigger clubs will be looking to do their own thing separately?
I mean, Rick, you're talking about China and, of course, India, and you're quite right. Obviously, they're enormous populations.
50 million people watching a game for £1 or 99 pence. It's quite the revenue stream, isn't it?
It seems to me the logical way to go.
Well, I think the collective deal will remain because there's a trade-off there. It's quite interesting that periodically around the Premier League table over the years we've had debates. A lot of the smaller and medium-sized clubs have been unhappy with the domestic TV deal and the formula for sharing the revenues on the basis that as the deals get bigger and bigger, then so clearly in absolute terms the gap between top and bottom in pure pound terms gets bigger, even though the ratio stays the same. But you know what? The trade-off has always been the bigger clubs saying, well, okay, that's fine. You want to talk about the domestic deal. We want to talk about the international deal because we're not happy that there's an equal share there when we're generating all the revenue. So, there's a kind of there's a counterbalance there which preserves the status quo. Now, I think the question in terms of will the future technology drive towards pay-per-view in the major territories, that's a slightly different question. That's a very good question to which nobody knows the answer. But again, there's no reason why that can't be done through the collective model. That doesn't have to be done club by club. The Premier League could just as easily do that using the existing model. That's not about arguing about how the pie is split. That's simply about how do we actually make the pie bigger.
Right. And then finally, last one, and we'll let you go. Do you believe or can you envisage a day in the English Premier League where there will be a salary cap of sorts? Even a luxury tax like they do, say, in the NBA or the NFL?
I find it incredibly difficult, and I'm not a Luddite. I'm not. I don't just have my head in the sand, but I think there are two very big issues which distinguish the Premier League from the American leagues. The first is that we have promotion and relegation. It's not a closed shop. It's ever changing. But more to the point, much more significantly, given the freedom of movement post-Bosman, the freedom of movement throughout the world of footballers, it's not so much that Liverpool are competing with Manchester United and Arsenal. You know, they're competing with Milan and Barcelona and Real Madrid. So a salary cap within the Premier League arguably would disadvantage clubs when it comes to the Champions League and European competition. So, you know, I think if a salary cap were to be introduced, it could only ever work
if it came from UEFA.
European basis. And how you actually enforce that on a European basis, goodness knows. I mean, good luck. But as I said, I think, you know, to give Michel Platini credit and to give UEFA credit for what they're doing, you know, I think the fair play rules are a step in the right direction. You know, they're not perfect. The devil's in the detail. But I think, to be fair, already clubs are sitting up, taking notice, and to an extent reflected in the somewhat lower transfer spend certain clubs accepted over the last 12 months. I think people are looking ahead and realising, you know what, UEFA are serious about this, and we're going to have to take this on board. So, and you know, by and large, you have to say that's a good thing. It's really difficult to argue against the principle of some financial common sense.
Okay, Rick, and lastly, before we let you go, and we couldn't let you go without you getting your opinion on this. Obviously, he's a Scouser. He's from the Everton side, obviously. But Wayne Rooney, I mean, let's face it, 2 years ago, Alex Ferguson could sleep quietly at night. He had three of the best football players on the planet in Rooney, Ronaldo and Tevez. Now it appears he has none of them. Wayne Rooney, a lot of talk about Manchester City. I think he should go to Chelsea myself. Is there the remote possibility that John W. Henry could break the bank and take Wayne Rooney to Liverpool? Your thoughts? Where does Wayne Rooney go from here?
And would the fans ever accept him as a former Everton and Man United player?
Well, I think you ought to be asking John W. Henry that question rather than me. You know, it's a very strange one, I have to say.
It really is.
When a player comes out and says, "I don't think Manchester United can satisfy my ambitions," you know, I look at players like Paul Scholes and Ryan Giggs. And think, well, you know what? They haven't done badly by being loyal to Manchester United, and you know, you have to say it makes you wonder.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, Rick Parry, non-executive director of the New York Cosmos, former managing director of Liverpool Football Club, as well as your time at Lancaster Gate with the Premier League. We thank you very, very much for your time, and we look forward to, as the New York Cosmos become more and more of an organisation, of possibly chatting with you again.
Yeah, be delighted to do that. I've enjoyed it.
Thank you very much.
Very much.
All right. Thanks, Rick.